serious people that have had sex with someone with a disability. What was different about the experience? Dated a girl who was blind about 7 years ago. Having sex with her was pretty normal, although she used her hands a lot more. I had sex with a man missing his left arm and shoulder. He was really good at spooning 10/10ths, would spoon again. I'm guessing he spooned laying on his left side, unless he deliberately made his only arm the bottom spooning arm. Had sex with a mute woman. Honestly wasn't that different, still lots of moaning, but didn't at all notice during the act. Switching positions was still normal too, since we both gestured with our bodies. Can mute people moan? I think it depends on the nature of their muteness, but generally yes. My partner was born without a femur in one of his legs. Affects sex 0% from my perspective. He's expressed before that he's disappointed he can never hold a girl up against a wall and have sex while holding her. I can't think of a more uncomfortable position though, and have no desire to try it, so I'm secretly glad that this isn't a possibility. I can attest, it's more difficult than you'd think. Kinda fun, but mostly just to giggle and keep going. If you're going really crazy you might keep it up for just a minute or two and the novelty wears off. Not a cool position at all. I have a permanent drywall scar at the top of my ass crack from getting the dick rammed into me against a wall. It was highly textured too, so it ripped the shit out of my skin. I actually left blood all over the wall. I have cerebral palsy and wheelchair bound about 80% of the time, and have such bad muscle spasms and tremors during high activity like sex that I'm prone to collapse or instant exhaustion. It's made for awkward encounters my whole life. However, it also led to me earning the nickname the human vibrator, and though encounters were awkward, I have never had an experience where they didn't orgasm. Between this and the free parking, I'd say I'm doing alright in life. Fucking tear it up my guy. Mad props on your fucking superpower. Dated a girl with manuscript in the past. She walked with a limp and had some motor control issues, but the sex was pretty normal. She struggled being on top, but she gave her all. That's the thing about disabled people. The ones that really make it in life have god levels of enthusiasm for the whole deal on account of the joy of triumph over massive strife. It's like this kind of joy that needs a critical mass of suffering to understand and experience. But when you do, it must be goddamn existential awakening, judging by the disabled people I've known. They always make me feel like an entitled, jaded, unenlightened piece of shit because they've been so utterly screwed by the universe, but so utterly seem to be content to exist in it. Yeah, she was a remarkable woman. We only broke up because of distance. We met randomly at a concert, but it turned out she lived about a 2-hour drive from me. We made it work for a while, but eventually we just both decided that it wasn't worth moving for because it was mostly casual and neither of us were invested enough to make a huge life change. Good girl though, I'd give her a 6.9/7, all around, not just sex. The profoundly deaf make interesting sex noises. That is all. The deaf make interesting noises, period. Lived next to a deaf couple, both deaf from birth, and they were by far the noisiest neighbors I have ever had. Sweet people, but I do not think they realize they are making noise most of the time. Sex, fighting, anything. Tons and tons of unconscious noise. Mostly grunts, groans, moans, things of that nature. I lived on the other side of a wall to a deaf couple and they would fight constantly. The first really bad fight they had, I had freaked out because it sounded like they were smacking the hell out of each other, but after analyzing it a bit, I realized that they were actually just aggressively signing to one another and the sounds were their hands slapping together. For 2 years I dated a girl with ovarian cancer, not a disability actually but a condition. Those who don't know, it means she was infertile. I knew this before we started dating. So every time we made love, I liked to keep it pure. In her memory, she would cry afterwards. I tried to make her feel that it was okay, but it's really hard even for a strong human being like her. In the morning she acted like all was fine, but I knew how much she was still hurting. Suddenly her situation started deteriorating. She developed a lot of other complications. On a routine visit, the doctor told us that she had only 4 months left. That's when I cried, and she told me it was okay. Then she asked me to break up. She said she didn't want me to go through all that would follow. She moved out and started living with her parents. I can proudly say that she was the stronger person BWNs. She made the decisions in our relationship, so I couldn't oppose her. She lived for 6 more months. I was hoping that somehow she might make it. But one morning her dad called me to say that she had passed away in her sleep. Jane, wherever you are, you'll be my beacon forever. How in the absolute F**k do I go from reading a post with a dude having an arm up his ass to reading something that has me crying like a baby at my desk? Seriously, why I can't imagine experiencing this. I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm glad you got to meet a wonderful person. This story will stick with me. Off and on dated a blind gal in college. Sex was lots of fun, but had to make sure her dog was in the room. But unable to reach assist. Without being too explicit, the dog took a few times to get used to her orgasm without being distressed, and we had to stick to fun in the bed or he would be a tripping hazard. I also took a few elbows to the nose as we adjusted in the bed before we learned to talk a bit more, and that it made sense for her to pretty much keep a hand on the back my neck/forearm so she could kiss me when she wanted to, rather than just me having that luxury. Best advice I can say is after you get the nervous first time out of the way, spend a good long time just establishing touch intimacy so your blind partner can know their way around you. That and gain consent for each new area. Touching BC body language is so critical in avoiding surprises. She also loved sensory play with ice cubes. That's everything I can think of. We didn't work out BC she couldn't see herself with me in the long run, but mostly BC I wanted to travel and move, and she had some understandable anxiety about that, which wasn't a priority for her. I told her using a pun to break it off was the best way to get bad news. I see what she did there. Hooked up with a blind chick one time. She was very handsy and less judgmental. It was a positive experience. With the fear of sounding judgmental, how did you end up meeting and eventually hooking up with a blind person? I've never seen a blind person on any bars or dating apps, and I can't imagine them interacting much romantically with strangers in public. Not up, but I met my blind BF on a dating app. It just happens. At least from what I understand about his friends, who are also blind, they mostly don't use dating apps for various reasons. Personally, I think a large part of it is that they don't get many matches, but I can't speak for them. Well, you see, dating apps largely rely upon pictures and the programming often doesn't support screen readers, so it's as much an accessibility thing as it is a preference thing. Hooked up with a blind guy a few years ago. Honestly, some of the best sex of my life. Intimate as hell. He was a huge cuddler, and we actually talked a whole lot. Even though it was a hookup, we became friends after because of how much we just chatted. Lol. Was he born blind? An acquaintance works for a special interest organization for the blind. Was having dinner with him and a few friends and acquaintances when one guy asks him, "How do people become blind?" Deadpan answer followed suit. Suddenly. Apparently there are conditions where your retina can just fall down like someone dropping the curtain at a theater. No, or little warning beforehand. While this is rare, most people who aren't born blind usually lose their sight in accidents. Good luck everyone. Where safety Googles. I hope this is a good place for a story. I was dating someone about 4 to 5 years ago, and she worked as a paralegal. I asked what kind of firm, and she said it was malpractice firm. Any interesting cases? I asked. Her reply, yes, one we are going to lose. What are you able to tell? I was curious about it. Well, we had a case where a guy needed to have eye surgery in both eyes, and a condition of his recovery was that he had to remain face down for a long period of time each day. It was something to do with eye pressure. Well, Our doctor didn't explicitly tell him to not get on a plane. The doctor only explained the importance of the pressure and the importance of facing down. But the guy got on a plane, and yeah, during the descent to land, he was permanently blinded. I'll never forget that story. Imagining being the person, feeling yourself going blind during the landing. Yikes. I'm in a wheelchair from a spinal cord injury when I was 17. In college, I met a girl who was also an paraplegic as well as having a traumatic brain injury that left her with some memory and speech issues. We spent a lot of time with each other as part of a disabled students group, hanging in our dorms because our rooms were accessible. She had been injured when she was just 7 and her overprotective parents had kept her very sheltered. She eventually got comfortable enough with me to confide that she had never been intimate with a guy before. That led to us kissing and exploring her sexuality. It was awkward and comical at times for a paraplegic guy to be sexing a paraplegic girl, but mostly it was very intimate and lots of fun. I knew about neurological stuff and could identify with her concerns with body image issues, so she could relax with me and be at ease. We went slow, and she gradually got more comfortable and came to like having someone look at her body, not in a medical way, but with sexual desire. Lots of discoveries for us as we went along, trying everything. Stuff like finding that using a wand and oral was able to get her to have multiple orgasms in a row. A really special moment for both of us. We were scared about autonomic dysreflexia, but it wasn't an issue. We spent the better part of a year just playing with each other's bodies. It was great. She went on to date and have relationships and eventually got married. We still keep in touch on Facebook, and I'm really happy for her. The last paragraph especially is wholesome as she IEI'd. Why can't more PPL be like this, ending relationships? Or maybe a lot of us are chill. We only hear about the crazy disrespectful shit though. You should make an r/AskReddit post asking about the chill breakups, because you're right, only the crazy ones with bad endings get shared most often. Interesting noises from a deaf girl. Especially interesting when I wasn't aware of her deafness. We had communicated the whole night in the club via text on her phone. Then her being a different nationality and me being in a different country, I'd assumed it to be a language barrier thing when she kept the phone texting up on the walk back to my room. I was quite drunk, which probably didn't help realizing sooner, but it was an instant realization once the noises began. I have Tourette's and sometimes I swear or slap myself in the chest. He says it doesn't change anything. I had a partner who had Tourette's. He had little tics, nothing verbal. He would snap or give a little shake when cuddling. It was cute to me. I'm married to a man with a Barbie butt. But seriously, my husband has Crohn's disease and had surgery to remove his large intestine and place an ostomy bag a month before we met. 3 years ago he had his anus removed and his butthole sewn shut. Hence the smooth Barbie butt. Sex is completely normal, and he's an excellent lover. The ostomy bag doesn't really get in the way, and we've only had 2 accidents in the 5 years we've been together. It wasn't the end of the world either. He's incredibly attentive, caring, and very respectful. The biggest difference was he had a horrible self-image sexually due to closed-minded people he had been with before. A little open-mindedness can go a long way. You might end up with your soulmate who can actually listen to what your body is saying at the right moment. Repeatedly. Edit. Thank you for the reward, but please consider donating to your local Crohn's and colitis support group. It can mean so much for people to have a safe place to freely vent about their illness with others that know what they are going through. Please feel free to ignore this if it's too personal or invasive, but what is the purpose of getting the anus removed? For him, as Crohn's affects people differently, they originally hoped to give him something called a J-pouch. Basically a large intestine created from sewing 2 sections of small intestine together. That would need an exit. However, his rectum was badly scared, essentially useless and keeping him sick. So he decided to keep the pouch instead of hoping extensive surgery and rehabilitation would work. No need to keep an exit that wasn't going to be used. I dated an absolutely gorgeous one-armed woman for a few weeks. Sex was great. Couldn't do doggy for obvious reasons. She broke it off with me because I was too immature for her, which I totally was at that time of my life. She ended up marrying one of my good buds and they have a son together. Very happy for both of them. My friend growing up had a dog that had to have one of its front legs amputated because of cancer. That dog rocked the tripod. My partner's roommate at the time we first started dating has a cat who had to have a leg amputated while my partner still lived there. He recovered so quickly and hardly anything changed for him other than the visual appearance of missing a leg. Even then, if he was laying down you'd have no idea cause he has really long fur. My partner is a bilateral above knee amputee and doesn't wear prosthetics. We can't do it from behind, but he's extremely flexible. Lack of muscles and tendons do this. We found some positions that work better for us and others that really don't. 10/10ths would highly recommend shagging him. Edit. Oh you naughty pickles. 5k upvotes. Gonna have to make an OnlyFans for him at this rate. He's reading this and basking in his sexual prowess. A couple of years back I met a lady that was missing a lower leg and had a deformed arm. Took her to my place and went to bed. Not really anything unusual about it at all up until this point. In the middle of the night I need to go to the bathroom, so I step out of the bed and onto her leg, her prosthetic leg that she had taken off and placed under the bed. I look down and see a foot. This is unusual to me because it has never happened before and I legit, in my drunken train of thought there was a dead body under the bed. It scared the crap out of me. It took me half a minute to realize it was hers. I dated a guy with spina bifida for a few years. Because he had decreased sensation in his genitals, he discovered masturbation with his nipples in his youth. That was incorporated into almost everything we did. He was also very easily turned on by dirty talk and could orgasm easily in the process of eating pussy. I was lucky. One of the downsides was he had a neurogenic bladder and was an intermittent cath user, so he had a constant UTI. The bacteria was just colonized all over in there. Even with condoms, I also had UTIs all the time. I had sex with someone who had spina bifida and was wheelchair bound. It was pretty normal other than trying to avoid his urostomy bag as I didn't want to accidentally disconnect it and cause a leak. He could transfer himself in and out of bed with ease and had incredible upper body strength, so he tossed me around a bit. We had intercourse, but he couldn't ejaculate, and although he could maintain an erection he couldn't feel it fully. His legs were flaccid, which is typical in someone who doesn't walk. Since he had limited sensation I was worried at first I would hurt him by leaning on him wrong or bending him in a way that legs don't go, but we managed fine. I'm a nurse, not his nurse, but a nurse just the same. I'm not sure if that helped with my comfort level of his deformities or not. Super cool dude, very giving lover, and was really great at phone/online sex. The most amazing imagination of anyone I have ever fucked. I had a negative experience. He felt his disability, physical, entitled him to do what he liked with me. He was very pushy and had boundary issues. On a physical level, what I agreed to was pretty good. I have worked with disabled people before and also made the experience that they can be very pushy. In my case, some of the disabled guys at my place of work tried to invite my coworkers who were my age, about 18-20, back to their flat or room every day despite being rejected all the time. Not sex paressy, but I did have a BDSM dom and good friend who was blind. Everything was very touch and sound based. He loved the sound of leather and the feel of lace and ribbons, and he would get a feel for what I was wearing by feeling it and having me describe the color. He had a preference for fat people since we feel softer, and had a big thing for moaning, the sounds of impact from a flogger, etc. Basically, anything sensual that didn't involve sight. BDSM play with a blind person is pretty much the same, just with a bit more communication. For example, if he was spanking me with a paddle, he would always have me confirm that it was hitting the right spot, though his aim was really impressive, since he couldn't see my face and expressions. He would always check in with me to make sure I was doing okay and was still enjoying it. This is good practice, whether you can see or not. Actually, I would often joke that he only liked me because he couldn't see how ugly I was, but he was adamant that attractiveness is so much more than a visual thing. It was super sweet and sexy how little aspects like my voice, the feel of my body, my personality, etc. were what made me attractive to him. I've posted this before, but it's a nice story. A few years ago I hooked up with this girl who worked at my local pharmacy. She was smoking hot, petite, with a gorgeous smile. She also had a deformed arm. Not quite a T-Rex arm, but a very slender arm ending in a couple of very tiny nubs where her fingers would have been. I got to know her and then asked her out, and we went on a couple of dates. She was moving overseas, so she didn't want anything serious, and I was fine with that. The sex was awesome. Just pure animalistic rutting. Like two monkeys fucking for their species. We did it everywhere. One weekend I was chilling at her house, and we got a little drunk and high. Then we started getting down with the nastiness and she asked me if she could play with my butt. I was fine with butt play and off she went. She was amazing. Doing all kind of funky things like milking my prostate and such. I never knew I'd really get into that sort of thing, but it was great. Then she said, "I'm going to try something, baby. Just relax." That's when I felt something bigger than a few fingers getting stuffed into my bunghole. It was jerkier, but it felt pretty neat, so I closed my eyes and relaxed as she did her magic. Then I heard her say, "This is so cool." And I looked down. She'd inserted her deformed arm, nubby little man fingers and everything, inside me up to about halfway up her forearm. To cut a long story short, that's how we both discovered a certain fetish. She moved away a few months later, but it was fun while it lasted. TL. Doctor got turned into a ventriloquist doll by a cute girl with a deformed arm. My GF has rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, and several other autoimmune diseases, which means when she's flaring, I have to be super gentle. Which sucks if I don't, because we both have high libido, pretty experienced, and she is a freak of nature in bed. So when she is hurting, I have to watch for small signs that people might not notice, so I don't cause joint or skin inflammation. Good days, crazy hereness. Bad days, Disney. I'm really great at the bodily cues now, but it took attentive time and patience. I have arthritis in my knees and something going on with my hips, so most positions are big out regardless, or it's a constant switching to rest some joint before it locks up. Honestly considering some kind of swing for the sexcapades, or maybe rig a system so I can ninja drop in like I'm stealing a diamond the size of my head. I'm the one with the disability. I have joint problems, and on occasion my knee or hip will just locate. It's a bit of a mood killer when the rhythm goes from oh to ow. I've got issues in my right knee to the point I can't kneel very long, so doggy is totally out of the question. Not even sure I can get on a knee to propose properly. But no, doggy is okay with me, since I literally last like -3 seconds in that position. I've heard having the girl be at the edge of the bed with the guy standing behind her can work for that. Was gonna say, that's worked well for me many times, or prone bone with her legs together. When I was stationed in Hawaii, I met a girl online that was deaf. She was absolutely gorgeous, biracial, petite, and had a disarming smile. When we finally decided to meet and hang out, my sign language skills were almost non-existent, but she was pretty good at reading lips, and she had a little electric device that we could type things out for the other to read. When we finally went back to my place and got down to business, things were moving along and going very well. We were both getting really into it as I took her to Plowtown. It was then that this lovely girl, whom I hadn't heard a single peep out of the entire time we'd been together, let out this very loud bizarre sound that I can't even explain. It scared the hell out of me, and I jumped off thinking I had hurt her. She assured me that she was okay, but I had gone completely soft in the commotion. I think she was a little embarrassed, but I got her the rest of the way to where she needed to be using alternate means. Then we grabbed some McDonald's, and I took her home. Edit. This really blew up, and got way more attention than I ever thought it would. Thanks for the likes and comments everyone. Explain the sound that made your dick soft. It's hard to explain, but if you've ever heard someone with a developmental disability get happy or excited, it was kind of like that. She had been completely deaf since birth, so she had no awareness of tone, pitch, or volume of her own voice. It just really caught me off guard, because she had been completely silent for the few hours we had been hanging out, and the very first thing I heard from her was this alarming sound mid-thrust. Fuck it, not what you asked necessarily, but I'll follow suit and talk about having sex with someone with schizophrenia and schizomnia. Not a missing leg, but interesting nonetheless. I would be having sex with my ex-BF, and he would just shut off. I didn't know what was happening at the time, but he would see or hear things that freaked him out or took him out of the mood. He would just shut down and lay there quietly. I would lay there with him and ask him what's wrong. Very strange to go from 80 to 0 and your BF to just lay there quietly and still. It would happen when we were out to dinner too. He would literally just stop talking to me, and we'd have to eat in silence for the rest of the date. Now he also has schizomnia, and that was by far the weirdest. I woke up, and he was grasping my mound with a super fucking hard fist with the fingers pressed to my vagina over my clothes. I call this the vagina claw. First of all folks, this is a weird fucking sex move. I was perplexed why ex-BF would pull this fucking weird ass move if he wanted to wake up and fuck. No kissing on the neck, no dick nudges, just vagina claw. Single hand move with no other contact. Second, the intensity. He was using all his force on this vagina claw move, and it was fucking bizarre. I tried to move him away, but he seemed to really fucking want sex apparently, so I maneuvered and started blowing him. Well, he woke up, and he looked at me like I had two heads, wondering why the fuck I was giving him a blowjob when he was trying to sleep. Like I started this whole shit. We went back to bed. He's tried to initiate sex a couple times and has zero memory of it. The end. Thanks for watching.